Hello.
Hi.
All right, we're making this video to discuss the expectations with our comprehensive program because it's way different than your typical training program. So if you're used to like conventional training, this is an important explanation.
Yeah. If you're, hopefully you found us because you heard about the internal strength model. You want to try it out. You've been working with functional range conditioning principles for a little while. That's typically the best expectation setup. However, if you've gotten to us via some other method, via Instagram, or someone recommended this to you, or you just happened to come across it in Train Heroic, this program might look dramatically different to what you're used to. So we just wanted to clarify what that is. We do have a longer YouTube video up where we explain the internal strength model a little bit more. But essentially, a couple of things, maybe key point differences would be good to go over so that you're not super confused about what you're seeing.
Yeah, I think like a really brief summary of how it's different is that it's including a lot of training on stuff that doesn't really get trained or touched with your normal training program. So we're really trying to get into those little corners of your body that you don't get used enough, but by developing those, you get a lot more overall capacity and resilience, which is a really cool aspect of training. So
a lot of that stuff is unrecognizable too. Like it's not something that you've come across before, and some people get a little bit confused about it. It's like, why are we doing all of this? It's kind of too much mobility. It's not technically really mobility. It's like specifically joint specific training. So the way that the workflow of an internal strength model session goes is that you're going to start off training the deepest tissues first. You're going to train your capsules, then you're going to train the rotational layer, then you're going to train the linear tissues. The linear tissues are just the big beefy muscles that you see that most of us really want to train because it makes you look like you work out. That's what you're in here for, right? So you'll see that more towards the stuff that you recognize more, you'll see at the end of the program. So we do incorporate like bodybuilding type stuff, powerlifting, but there's all of this joint specific training in there as well. And this is stuff that you won't find in other training programs. So you're not going to come across that. You have to do it. You should do it. If you don't do it, those parts of you are suffering. They're not getting trained. They're declining at where the rest of you maybe isn't.
For the majority of individuals who don't have like a catastrophic fall or accident, the pain and problems with our bodies that develop over time, and that could be from training or not training or whatever, often involves lacking joint capacity or connective tissue. So from a standpoint of like feeling good, it's huge. But the other cool part about it is that when you develop those qualities, you can do less actual strength training on the big beefy stuff and you get more out of it. So we're being really efficient with our time, but we're really kind of satisfying like those overall requirements of what we want, not just being strong and looking strong, but actually having a body that really has a lot of freedom to do whatever you want.
So it's an all-in-one program because technically training really is all-in-one. Like you don't want to separate out your, in our view anyway, you don't want to have your strength program over here that some other guy writes and then your mobility stretching program over here that some other guy writes, and they're not talking to each other and they have no idea what is going into either of these programs. There's going to be a lot of conflict, overlap, whereas we're streamlining it for you. So while you might look at it and go, what is all this stuff? Like, there's only a little bit of this and there's a lot of stuff to do and like, oh my God. But most of those one things that you see are very quick, especially like once you get over the learning curve of figuring out what those things are. It's a quick thing. Like it might take 2 seconds to just do, a couple shoulder cars in between. But the way that that flow works is that you're touching each of those tissues. You're not expected to do 3 sets of 5. The internal strength model done ideally is 1 set to failure. There's also caveats for those of you that don't want to train 1 set to failure. You don't have to train 1 set to failure, but that's the way that it's set up. Each day also comes with a long version and a short version. So if you're pressed for time, you can do the short version. If you're just learning the system, the short version is probably a better place to start because it'll get you through the workout faster. But yeah, we're training it all. It's a streamlined, organized program. And I think maybe the other thing that's important to touch on is repetition versus novelty.
Yeah, and or you could even say that more as like doing something to become more efficient at it, or doing something to actually train your body to develop more of something that it doesn't have, because they are different things. Like the more that we do the same exact thing, the more efficient we're becoming at it. But the side effect of that efficiency is that it's less challenging for your body to do it. So you get less adaptation out of it. So in this training, you'll see a lot of carryover or a lot of consistency on the joint and tissue specific stuff. But when it comes to some of the strength training stuff, it might be changing more than you're used to, simply because we want to create that novel response each time we're training, because our goal is to develop more stuff. When you develop a body that you've trained to actually have more anatomical capacity, then like efficiency comes as a side effect when you just go do that thing that you want to do. So it's
You could also totally reverse engineer that, by challenging the hip, doing hip things in a more varied way, and then giving it the same back squat to do, because then you have a new hip doing that back squat. So
bring better parts to the exercise, right?
Yeah.
We say that a lot.
But in one way or another, like there's a lot of discussion in the strength training world about how like you just have to do the same old stuff, and like kudos to those coaches out there providing boring programs. And we used to subscribe to that, and like to an extent there are things in the program that will be repetitive and boring, like any good program has. But there's also a lot of new ways to target tissue, kind of a thing, like and especially if it's just like if it's an exercise that you want to get good at, you're going to see repetition because you want that efficiency, just like any sport training. Like if you're a power lifter and you expect to be better at power lifts, you want to do them with more repetition. If you're a jiu-jitsu athlete, you got to practice your craft, whatever it is, dancer, you practice stuff. But like a bicep, there's a lot of different ways to target and challenge a bicep, and it's going to be getting training, and you don't have to do a bicep curl every time you train your bicep, because that is that kind of boring adaptation where you're like, like you should be hitting it in different ways, like using different positions or whatever. So I hope that makes sense, that it's not, it's not like a muscle confusion program. Like if you look at it and you're like, there's too many different exercises in here. There's a total reason for that. There are things that stay the same, but there are also things that change, and it's planned that way.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like if you're somebody who's really familiar with traditional training and you found us, there's probably a reason that you found us, because like we all trained for years in a similar way where we did a lot of the same stuff over and over again. And it's not that we didn't get some positive results from that, but there were a lot of sacrifices with it. And so our whole goal with this program and this kind of training is to really like give people really everything that they want with training. And one other cool thing about the program, that's probably one of the best parts, is that you get access to us. And since the program is weird and there's new stuff, we want you to remember that so you can ask us questions and help clarify things, because it's going to be a new experience. You're doing a lot of weird shit that you maybe haven't done before, training body parts that you haven't trained in certain angles, and it takes some practice to get through it, to get familiar with it, and so we're here to help you navigate that.
We want you to reach out to us. There's instructions once you sign up about how to reach out to us, the best way to get a hold of us, but we want that like coach-client conversation to be happening. We don't want you to just join the program and then never hear from you unless you really want to do that, but we're here to help. Also, like, ideally, the best way to use the internal strength model is to individually assess your deficits, ideally with a professional, and then target the training really specifically to you. But obviously, not everyone can afford that. So what we're trying to do with this program, we provide a self-assessment that shows up every Sunday that you can take. And the self-assessment also has a little bit of guidance on how to change the program slightly. But again, we're here to help you with that if it doesn't make sense to you. We offer a half hour once you get going. If you're going to commit to the program, we offer a free half hour to help you with any questions you have about the program, or do some kind of a quick mini assessment on something that's been bothering you with some recommendations. We're here to help you basically. And so if you do join and anything about this program doesn't make sense to you, please reach out to us, because we really have put a lot of thought and a lot of years of practice, trial and error, several gyms, hundreds of clients into this programming. It's not just some like random stuff that's getting generated by using ChatGPT. So.
That's a great idea, though. And like as Sarah mentioned too, like generalized programming isn't for everybody. So if you get into this and you realize that there's more nuance that you want or some more specific stuff, I mean, that always is an option too. You can reach out and we can do more one-on-one sessions or customized programming and go down that route as well.
Yep. So I hope that makes sense. Like, this is an all-encompassing program. It looks like a lot of stuff, but time-wise, the workouts, once you kind of get the hang of them, the short workouts take 45 minutes to an hour. The long version workouts take an hour to an hour and a half, or if you're really dawdling around 2 hours, but that would be on, like it should be doable between 60 and 90 minutes. But it is your mobility program, your strength program. There's also conditioning in there. There's full kin stretch classes that you can do at any time. It's a lot. We also will help you tailor it down too. Like, you're not expected to do all of that. Like, it's a overachiever program, basically. Like, somebody that actually really does all of that stuff is in amazing shape and has really good recovery. And I wouldn't necessarily expect that most of the people in that program would really be doing all of those days.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's more training than I currently do right now, and both of us really, like, that's the other deal with a generalized program, is that you have to kind of cater to the people who need a lot of training and people who need a little bit, and you can choose your own adventure within that, and we can help you do it.
Totally.
So.
Yeah, we have good advice on how to condense the program if you don't want that full, like, this is just too much for me. We just want it to be there if you want it, like, you don't have to do it all. So there's definitely ways that you can shrink that. Like, essentially, quick note, what I would do personally is I would take the two short versions and kind of combine those into an upper body day and do one upper body day, if I felt like doing that. Yeah, so I think that's basically it. But please reach out if you have questions. If you look at it doesn't make sense, you want to know why we're doing anything, we're here to answer questions, so reach out to us.
Leave us a comment on the video, we'll get back to you.
All right.